Zarala stood nervously at the airlock, her four slender arms adjusting the ceremonial sash across her iridescent body. The metal door before her represented more than just an entrance to the human ship U.S. Horizon. It was a doorway to what she secretly hoped would be the downfall of human expansion into space. "Remember your duty," her father's words echoed in her mind. As the youngest daughter of Tulax's most respected scientific family, Zarala had surprised everyone by volunteering for this mission. Her people, tall and graceful beings with shimmering skin that reflected their emotions, had watched humans with growing concern. These primitive creatures had somehow developed faster than light travel only 50 years after their first moon landing. Such rapid progress was unnatural and dangerous. The airlock hissed open. Zarala lifted her chin and stepped forward with practiced dignity. Three humans waited on the other side, their soft pink skin and simple two-armed bodies looking fragile and unfinished to her eyes. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," said the oldest human, a male with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. "I'm Captain Alan Russell." Zarala performed the formal greeting of her people, her upper arms extended while her lower arms pressed against her chest. "I am Zarala of the Scientific Guild of Tulax. I bring knowledge and seek knowledge." The captain's smile didn't reach his eyes. He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is my second in command, Lieutenant Commander Sofia Martinez." The female human nodded, but kept her hands clasped behind her back. Zarala noticed how the woman's eyes scanned her body, likely noting the extra limbs and the small breathing slits along her neck. "And this," the captain continued, "is Lieutenant Olivia Grant. She'll be your liaison during your stay with us." The youngest human stepped forward with a genuine smile. Her hair was the color of the sunset on Tulax's smaller moon, and her eyes showed curiosity rather than suspicion. "It's an honor to meet you," Lieutenant Grant said. "I studied your species' biological adaptations. The way your skin cells can process light for secondary energy is fascinating." Zarala blinked her large oval eyes. She hadn't expected any human to know such details about Tulaxian physiology. "Your quarters have been prepared," Captain Russell said, clearly eager to move things along. "Lieutenant Grant will show you the way and provide you with a basic tour of the vessel. Some areas remain restricted, as discussed in our diplomatic agreements." "Of course," Zarala replied smoothly. "I understand security concerns." But she didn't. The diplomatic agreement had mentioned restricted areas, but provided no logical reason for them. Just another human oddity that raised her suspicions. As they walked through the corridors, Zarala noticed how the human crew stared at her. Some with open curiosity, others with poorly disguised distrust. She recorded everything in her memory: the layout of the ship, the technology visible in open panels, the communication devices the crew carried. "The science labs are this way," Lieutenant Grant explained, leading her down a side corridor. "We've allocated space for your equipment and research needs." The lab was small but adequate. What caught Zarala's attention was the energy signature coming from somewhere below. It didn't match any human technology she had studied in preparation for this mission. "What is beneath this section?" she asked casually. Lieutenant Grant's smile faltered slightly. "Storage mostly. Nothing interesting." A lie. Zarala had studied human facial expressions extensively. The slight tightening around the lieutenant's eyes was a clear indicator. "Here are your quarters," Grant said, stopping at a door. "Adjusted for Tulaxian atmospheric preferences. The gravity is set to 85% of Earth standard, which should be comfortable for you." Zarala stepped inside and was surprised by the attention to detail. The lighting had been modified to include the ultraviolet spectrum her people needed. The sleeping platform was angled for her physiology. "This is acceptable," she said, though it was actually impressive. "Dinner is in the main mess hall at 1800 hours, Grant explained. "Captain Russell would like you to join the senior staff." When the human left, Zarala immediately began unpacking her scientific equipment. Some were legitimate research tools. Others were sophisticated scanning devices disguised as innocent cultural artifacts. The humans were hiding something. And during her 6-month stay aboard this ship, she would discover exactly what it was. Zarala's first week aboard the U.S. Horizon passed quickly. Each day, she wrote detailed reports about human behavior and technology, encrypting them for eventual transmission back to Tulax. Her people needed to know what these humans were really capable of. On the 8th day, Zarala sat with Lieutenant Grant in the ship's observation lounge. The vast window showed the stars streaking by as the vessel moved through space. "How fast are we traveling now?" Zarala asked, her voice casual as she sipped the sweet blue liquid humans had provided as a substitute for her native drink. Lieutenant Grant smiled. "About half our maximum speed. We should reach the Epsilon system in 3 days." Zarala's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of surprise that humans couldn't recognize. According to the technical specifications she had studied, reaching Epsilon should take at least 6 days at the ship's supposed maximum speed. The humans were clearly hiding their true capabilities. "Lieutenant Grant, you have been very helpful," Zarala said. "Perhaps you could explain why certain areas of the ship remain off-limits to me." The human woman's smile tightened slightly. "Just standard security protocols. Every ship has its secrets." She changed the subject quickly. "How are you finding the crew? Is everyone treating you well?" "Most avoid me," Zarala admitted. "Communications Officer Patel has been friendly. He asked many questions about Tulaxian music. Victor is like that. Curious about everything," Grant said with a genuine smile. "He's good at connecting with people." Too good, Zarala thought. She had noticed how the communications officer seemed to sense her moods, even when she tried to hide them. It was unsettling. Later that day, Zarala walked toward the science lab when she heard voices from a nearby room. The door was slightly open. She slowed her steps. "The Prometheus systems are functioning at 98%, said a gruff male voice she recognized as Chief Engineer Price. "But I don't like running diagnostics with the alien on board." "We don't have a choice," Captain Russell replied. Headquarters was clear. "Maintain regular system checks regardless of our guest. Just make sure she doesn't find out." Zarala moved quickly past the door before they could spot her. Project Prometheus. No such system was mentioned in any of the documentation about human ships. Her suspicions grew stronger. That night in her quarters, Zarala examined the data from her hidden scanners. The energy readings from the lower decks were unlike anything in Tulaxian science. It pulsed with a precise rhythm that suggested an advanced power source. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Lieutenant Grant is requesting entry," announced the ship's computer. Zarala quickly hid her equipment. "Allow entry." The human woman stepped inside carrying a small container. "I brought you something from Earth. It's called chocolate. Many humans consider it a universal peace offering." Zarala accepted the gift with her lower hands, a gesture of casual acceptance in her culture. "Thank you. That is thoughtful. Also, Captain Russell asked me to inform you that we'll be conducting some routine drills tomorrow. You might notice unusual activity or hear alert signals. Nothing to worry about." After Grant left, Zarala opened the box and sniffed the brown squares inside. Her scanners detected no toxins, just unusual organic compounds. She took a small bite. The taste was surprisingly pleasant. But her mind was on the routine drills. The timing seemed suspicious after overhearing talk about the secret Prometheus system. The next morning, Zarala deliberately walked past the restricted engineering section during the scheduled drills. The corridor was empty except for a single guard who watched her closely. But her passive scanners captured valuable data. Something in that section was generating powerful electromagnetic fields. When alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship, the guard straightened. "Please return to your quarters, ma'am. Standard procedure during drills." Zarala nodded and left, but not before seeing Chief Engineer Price rush past with several technicians. The engineer's face showed concern, not the calm efficiency expected during a routine drill. Back in her quarters, Zarala reviewed her scanner data. The energy signature during the so-called drill had spiked to levels that should have melted standard human technology. What were these humans hiding? Whatever it was, she was now certain it could threaten her entire civilization. 3 weeks into Zarala's stay on the U.S. horizon, the ship's calm routine suddenly changed. Zarala was studying plant samples with Lieutenant Grant in the science lab when the emergency alert sounded. "All senior officers report to the bridge immediately," came Captain Russell's voice over the ship-wide communication system. Lieutenant Grant's face showed concern. "I need to go. Please return to your quarters until we determine what's happening." But Zarala had no intention of missing this opportunity. As soon as Grant left, she slipped into the corridor and followed at a distance. Instead of going directly to her quarters, she took a side passage that led toward the bridge. She had discovered this observation point during her private explorations, a maintenance panel that allowed her to hear bridge conversations. "Mining Outpost Gamma 7 reports catastrophic failure of their environmental systems," said a voice Zarala recognized as Communications Officer Patel. "They have 38 workers trapped with life support failing. Estimated time before complete failure is 4 hours. How long to reach them at standard speed?" Captain Russell asked. 3 hours, 40 minutes, sir," replied Lieutenant Commander Martinez. There was a pause before the captain spoke again. "That doesn't give us much margin for error. Status of nearby vessels?" "None within range, Captain," Martins answered. Zarala pressed closer to the panel. This was a real emergency, not a drill. "We'll need to use emergency protocols," the captain said, his voice lowered. "Lieutenant Price, prepare the Prometheus drive for short-burst operation. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, clear all non-essential personnel from E-Deck." "Captain," Martins said hesitantly, "what about our guest?" "Keep her occupied and away from sensitive areas. This is a rescue mission, and those miners won't survive if we don't use every resource available." Zarala hurried back to her quarters, mind racing. The Prometheus drive must be the secret technology she had detected. But why was it only used in emergencies? And why was it so important to keep it hidden from her? An hour later, Lieutenant Grant came to escort her to the observation lounge. "We've diverted to respond to an emergency," Grant explained. "A mining outpost is in trouble. You can watch the rescue operation from here if you wish." Through the large viewing window, Zarala could see the small moon where the outpost was located. The ship was approaching much faster than should have been possible. "We arrived quickly," Zarala commented. Grant nodded but didn't elaborate. "The situation is worse than reported. The outpost was hit by unexpected radiation from a solar flare. The radiation levels are extremely dangerous." Captain Russell's voice came over the communication system. "Rescue Team Alpha, prepare for immediate deployment. Medical team standing by in Shuttle Bay 2. Zarala watched as a shuttle left the horizon and flew toward the damaged outpost. On a nearby screen showing the shuttle's external camera feed, she could see the outpost's main structure had partially collapsed. What happened next changed everything Zarala thought she knew about humans. The shuttle landed, and rescue workers in what appeared to be standard environmental suits exited. But the radiation levels displayed on the monitor were far beyond what those suits could protect against. Any living being should die within minutes of exposure. Yet the humans moved through the radiation without apparent harm. One rescuer, Zarala recognized Engineer Price from his build, approached a collapsed entrance. Instead of using equipment to move the rubble, he grabbed a massive metal beam and pushed it aside with strength no human should possess. "What am I seeing?" Zarala whispered. Lieutenant Grant, standing beside her, tensed visibly. "They're using specialized equipment," she said too quickly. Then the camera showed something impossible to explain away. A female rescuer, Dr. Chen from Medical, was trapped when part of the ceiling collapsed. The debris should have crushed her. Instead, she stood up, pushing tons of material off her body, completely unarmed. Zarala turned to Grant, her forearms tightening in the Tulaxian gesture of confrontation. "That is not specialized equipment. What are humans really? Grant's face paled. I don't know what you think you saw, but do not lie to me, Zarala said. Not after what I just witnessed. For the first time since meeting her, Lieutenant Grant had no answer. After witnessing the impossible during the rescue mission, Zarala became determined to discover the truth about humans. The friendship that had been growing between her and Lieutenant Grant now felt hollow, built on lies. For 3 days following the incident, Zarala pretended everything was normal. She attended meals in the mess hall, participated in scheduled cultural exchanges, and smiled at the crew. But at night, she worked silently in her quarters, building small devices from components she had smuggled aboard. On the 4th night, she placed these devices, tiny surveillance units no bigger than her fingertip, in strategic locations throughout the ship. One in the mess hall, one near the captain's quarters, and one in the corridor leading to the restricted engineering section. When Lieutenant Grant invited her to the lab to study Earth plant samples the next morning, Zarala agreed with a friendly smile. But her true attention was on the data being collected by her devices. You've been quiet lately, Grant said, looking up from her microscope. Is everything okay? I am processing many new experiences, Zarala replied, which was not entirely untrue. Human culture is complex. Grant nodded. I understand. It must be overwhelming sometimes. She hesitated, then added, about what happened during the rescue mission. There is nothing to discuss, Zarala said quickly. As you explained, it was specialized equipment. Grant looked relieved, not realizing that Zarala had already begun her own investigation. By evening, her surveillance devices had collected valuable data, conversations, movement patterns, and energy signatures. Back in her quarters, Zarala analyzed what she had gathered. The results were shocking. Energy readings from crew members showed unusual patterns. Their body temperatures fluctuated in ways that weren't natural. And their strength, measured by micro-vibrations when they touched objects, exceeded normal human capability. But her most valuable discovery came from the medical bay. Her device had recorded Dr. Chen discussing blood sample results with a nurse. The nanite levels in the rescue team are stable, Dr. Chen had said. No damage from the radiation exposure. Nanites, tiny machines in the blood. This was technology far beyond what humans had shared with the galactic community. The next day, Zarala visited the medical bay, complaining of minor discomfort, a Tulaxian respiratory issue that required no treatment but would justify a scan. I'd like to take a small blood sample, Dr. Chen said, just to make sure there's no cross-species reaction to our environment. Zarala agreed, watching carefully as the doctor placed the sample in an analyzer. When Dr. Chen turned away to check another patient, Zarala quickly used a small tool to copy data from the nearby medical terminal. Later, comparing her blood work to stored human samples she had secretly accessed, she found the proof she needed. Human blood contained microscopic machines that repaired damage, fought disease, and enhanced physical performance. Her next discovery came when she accidentally bumped into Communications Officer Patil in the corridor, planting a tiny scanner on his uniform. That evening, her scanner transmitted data showing unusual brain activity patterns from Patil, waves that matched Tulaxian research on telepathic abilities. This explained his uncanny ability to sense others' emotions. As she compiled her evidence, Zarala heard a soft peep. One of her surveillance devices had been found, the one near the captain's quarters. There was a knock at her door. When it opened, Lieutenant Grant stood there, holding the tiny device in her palm. "We need to talk," Grant said, her expression serious. "This belongs to you, I believe." Zarala felt her skin color shift to the deep blue of alarm, a reaction she couldn't control. She was caught. Instead of calling security, however, Grant entered and closed the door behind her. "What exactly are you looking for, Zarala?" "The truth," Zarala replied, deciding that honesty was her only option now. "Humans are not what you claim to be. I have proof." Grant sighed and sat down. "And what do you plan to do with this?" Proof. That depends on what you tell me now, Zarala said, her four hands gripping the edge of her desk. What are humans, really? And what is Project Prometheus? The human woman looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. It's time you knew the truth. But I warn you, once you learn it, everything will change. Before Lieutenant Grant could explain anything, the ship's alarm system activated with a loud, pulsing sound. Red alert. All hands to emergency stations. Captain Russell's voice came through the communication system. We are approaching an unknown space phenomenon. Brace for possible impact. Grant jumped to her feet. We need to get to a secure area. Now. Zarala followed Grant through the corridors as crew members rushed to their stations. The ship suddenly shook violently, throwing them against the wall. What's happening? Zarala asked, steadying herself with all four arms. I don't know exactly, Grant replied, but we're in danger. They reached the bridge just as another shockwave hit the ship. Through the main viewing screen, Zarala saw something she had never witnessed before. A tear in the fabric of space itself, glowing with strange energy. Report, Captain Russell commanded, gripping his chair as the ship rocked again. It's a space-time rupture, sir, said the science officer. Our sensors didn't detect it until we were almost on top of it. It's expanding rapidly. Can we reverse course? The captain asked. Engines are not responding correctly, sir, replied Engineer Price from his station. The rupture is affecting our systems. Another violent shake sent sparks flying from a nearby control panel. A crew member screamed as the panel exploded in his face, sending him crashing to the floor with severe burns. Get him to medical, Russell ordered. Zarala watched in shock as the injured human was carried away. The burns should have been fatal, yet the man remained conscious, his skin already beginning to heal before her eyes. Damage report, Russell demanded. Hull breach on Deck C, Martins reported. Automatic seals engaged, but they're failing. We have crew trapped in that section. The captain made a quick decision. Lieutenant Grant, take your team to Deck C. Save our people. Grant nodded and rushed out. Without thinking, Zarala followed her. You should stay on the bridge, Grant said when she noticed Zarala behind her. I might be able to help, Zarala insisted. They reached Deck C to find the corridor filling with smoke. The hull breach was visible, a tear in the metal wall with emergency force fields flickering unstably around it. Beyond the force fields, Zarala could see the empty blackness of space. There are people trapped in the science lab, a crew member reported, pointing down the smoke-filled corridor. The structural supports are failing. Grant and her team moved forward, but a sudden explosion blocked their path with fallen debris. The ceiling in that section began to collapse. We can't reach them this way, one of the team members said. Grant looked at the heavy metal blocking their path, then at Zarala. For a moment, she seemed to be making a decision. Then, without warning, she stepped forward, planted her feet, and gripped the edge of a massive metal beam. With strength no normal human should possess, she lifted the beam and pushed it aside. Her muscles visibly changed beneath her uniform, becoming more defined as she exerted herself. Help me clear a path, she said to her team, no longer hiding their true capabilities. Zarala watched in amazement as the humans moved debris that should have required heavy machinery. When they reached the science lab, they found 3 crew members trapped inside, one pinned under fallen equipment. The air is venting, one of them called out. Force fields failing. Without protective gear, the humans worked in an environment that was quickly losing oxygen. Their movements remained strong even as Zarala felt her own breathing become difficult. Then the worst happened. The remaining force field collapsed completely. The vacuum of space pulled at everything not secured. Zarala felt herself being dragged toward the breach. In an instant, Grant was there, one hand gripping a secured metal bar, the other holding Zarala's arm with impossible strength. The human's eyes showed strain but determination as she held them both against the pull of space until emergency systems finally sealed the breach. As they recovered in a safe area, Zarala stared at Grant. "You should be dead. You all should be dead." Grant looked at her with serious eyes. "We need to talk to the captain. It's time you learned about Project Prometheus." Back on the bridge, Captain Russell was coordinating repair efforts. The ship had stabilized, moving away from the space anomaly at safe speed. When he saw Zarala and Grant enter, he understood immediately what had happened. "She saw everything, didn't she?" Grant nodded. "She deserves to know the truth, sir." The captain sighed deeply. "Very well. Lieutenant, escort our guest to my ready room. It's time we tell her what humans really are." In the captain's ready room, Zarala sat across from Captain Russell, with Lieutenant Grant standing nearby. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the ship's engines. "What you've seen today was never meant to be revealed to any non-human species," Captain Russell began, his voice serious but calm. "For 200 years, we have kept this secret." "What secret?" Zarala asked, her four hands clasped together in the formal Tulaxian posture of receiving important knowledge. "Humans are not what we appear to be," the captain said. "What the galaxy knows is humans are actually what we call post-humans. We changed ourselves long ago." Zarala's large eyes widened. "Changed how?" The captain touched a control panel on his desk. A holographic display appeared between them, showing images of human DNA strands with highlighted sections. 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself, he explained. "Our wars, pollution, and selfishness brought us to the edge of extinction. The survivors made a choice that would change our species forever." The hologram shifted to show historical images of sick, suffering humans amid destroyed cities. "Project Prometheus was our solution," Russell continued, "named after an ancient Earth myth about bringing fire and knowledge to humanity. Our scientists developed ways to change human DNA, enhance our bodies with microscopic machines, and improve our minds." "The nanites I detected in your blood," Zarala said, understanding dawning on her. "Yes, every human is born with them now. They repair damage, fight disease, and help us survive conditions that would kill our ancestors." Lieutenant Grant stepped forward. "We can breathe toxic air briefly, survive radiation, heal quickly from injuries, and live much longer lives. Some of us have other abilities too." "Like Officer Patel's emotional sensing," Zarala said. Captain Russell nodded. "Some humans develop limited telepathic abilities. Others have different gifts. We don't all have the same enhancements." "Why keep this secret?" Zarala asked. "Your species could dominate the galaxy with these abilities. That's exactly why we hide it," Grant said passionately. "Before Project Prometheus, humans were dangerous, violent, greedy, and destructive. The nanites don't just enhance our bodies. They help control our worst instincts. We remember our history and fear what might happen if we let power corrupt us again." The captain stood and walked to the viewing window, looking out at the stars. "We've seen how other species react to advanced technology. Some would try to steal it. Others would attack us out of fear. Most would never trust us again. So we present ourselves as just another young, somewhat primitive species finding our way in the galaxy." Zarala thought about this. Everything she had been told about humans was wrong. They weren't technologically inferior or physically weak. They were perhaps the most advanced species she had ever encountered. "The rescue mission," she said, understanding now. "You saved those miners by exposing yourselves to radiation that would kill normal beings." "We help when we can," Grant said simply. "But we try to do it in ways that don't reveal our true nature." Captain Russell turned back from the window. "Now you know our greatest secret, Zarala. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge?" The implied threat was clear. She could not be allowed to leave the ship if she intended to reveal humanity's secret to the galaxy. "I need to understand more," Zarala said carefully. "If humans are so advanced, why haven't you conquered other worlds? Why do you cooperate with species you could easily defeat?" Grant smiled sadly. Because we tried conquering. It nearly destroyed us. Project Prometheus didn't just enhance our bodies. It taught us wisdom. The programming in our nanites promotes cooperation and peace. We literally cannot start another war of conquest without our own bodies fighting against us. Zarala had never considered this possibility. A species that chose to limit its own power after learning the cost of using it unwisely. Your people took the fire of the gods, she said slowly, and then chose to warm others rather than burn them. Captain Russell nodded. That's a poetic way to put it. But yes, that's the core of Project Prometheus. Now you must decide. Will you keep our secret, or will you force us to protect it? For 3 days after learning the truth about humans, Zarala stayed mostly in her quarters. She needed time to think. Everything she believed about her mission, about humans, about her own people's superiority. All of it had been wrong. Lieutenant Grant brought her meals and checked on her but didn't push for a decision. The humans were giving her space to process what she had learned. On the 4th day, Zarala requested a meeting with Captain Russell and his senior officers. It was time to tell them what she had decided. When she entered the conference room, all the senior staff were present. Captain Russell, Lieutenant Commander Martinez, Lieutenant Grant, Engineer Price, Dr. Chen, and Communications Officer Patel. Their faces showed concern but not hostility. "Thank you for coming," Captain Russell said. "Have you reached a decision about what you learned?" Zarala stood tall. All 4 of her arms relaxed at her sides in the Chulaxian gesture of openness. "I have had time to consider everything. When I came aboard this ship, I believed humans were primitive and potentially dangerous. I planned to gather information that my people could use against you if necessary." The humans exchanged glances but didn't interrupt. "Now I understand that humans are not primitive at all. You are perhaps the most advanced species I have encountered, not just in technology, but in wisdom." "What do you mean?" asked Lieutenant Commander Martinez. "My people achieved great technological advancement, but we still fight wars over resources and power. We still believe strength means controlling others. You humans had the power to conquer the galaxy, but chose cooperation instead. You could have used your abilities to dominate, but you hide them and help others quietly." Captain Russell nodded slowly. "It wasn't an easy choice. Many humans wanted to use our enhancements to build an empire, but the majority remembered our history and chose a different path." "I will not reveal your secret," Zarala announced. "My final report will only discuss the cultural exchanges we shared, not what I discovered about Project Prometheus." The tension in the room visibly decreased. Communications Officer Patel smiled broadly, likely sensing the sincerity in her emotions. However, Zarala continued, "I have a suggestion. Perhaps it is time for humans to begin sharing some of your medical technology with other species. Not everything, not the full enhancements, but enough to help those suffering from diseases and injuries." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "That's actually something we've been discussing internally for years. The concern has always been that other species might discover our full capabilities. A calculated risk," Zarala agreed, "but one that might build trust between species." Captain Russell stood up. "We'll take your suggestion seriously, Zarala. Our leadership has been debating this very issue. Your perspective as an outsider might help us make that decision." 2 weeks later, as her 6-month assignment neared its end, Zarala packed her belongings. She had destroyed all evidence of human enhancements in her personal records. Her official report praised human cooperation and friendship, but mentioned nothing of their true nature. Lieutenant Grant came to escort her to the shuttle bay. "I'll miss our conversations," the human said with genuine warmth. "As will I," Zarala replied. "You have changed how I see the universe, Olivia." In the shuttle bay, Captain Russell handed her a small crystal device. "This contains human literature, art, and philosophy, the journey that led us from our violent past to what we are now. No technical secrets, just our story. I hope it helps you understand us better." Zarala accepted the gift with all 4 hands, the highest sign of respect in her culture. "Thank you, Captain." As her transport vessel pulled away from the U.S. horizon, Zarala watched the human ship grow smaller in the viewport. She was not the same person who had arrived 6 months earlier. The Tulaxians had always believed they were superior to other species because of their technology and intelligence. Now she understood that true advancement wasn't measured by power, but by how that power was used. Someday, perhaps, humans would reveal their true nature to the galaxy. And when that day came, Zarala hoped the other species would be wise enough to see what she now saw. Not a threat, but an example to follow.